Abby Phillip has this, I mean, literally nobody's watching that show. I think it's just us four, just pulling clips. We pulled the ratings. They are dreadful. My God, they're so bad. All of CNN is going away. Trust me, I looked at the numbers today. But in any event, she's there hanging on like the rest of them. And the only thing that's good about her show is sometimes she puts on Scott Jennings, and it's fun to watch him fight. And then she had Jillian Michaels on the other day. And Jillian Michaels raised this issue about the Smithsonian. Well, what does Abby Phillip do? She decides to go on an even more terrible person's podcast, Kara Swisher. And she decides to shit all over her guests when speaking to Kara Swisher. These are the people who make the show tolerable for some small faction of Republicans. And she decides to take a massive dump on both of them. Let's see. I'll give you, let's just do what she said about Jillian Michaels first, top 4.
And then when it became clear that she was trying to sort of downplay slavery, I was just like shocked. Like, are you really going to do this on national television, giving her an opportunity to not do it? But she continued on. And then later on, she said that she got this list of talking points from the White House about exhibits that they wanted to dispute. And frankly, it was pretty ignorant. I don't like to talk negatively about guests who come on the show because I just don't think that's good form. Even when I disagree with people, I respect their right to
and therefore I won't
embarrass themselves on national television. I think it is their right to do that.
Respect their right.
There we go. So I don't like to talk negatively about them, but she was ignorant and she embarrassed herself, and that is her right. So it's not exactly the most, I've never seen Mark Halperin do this after somebody swings by next up or two-way.
I learned that from David Brinkley. You don't speak ill of your guests after they leave, and certainly not after they've been nice enough to give you some of their time.
So she did, and she took a shot at Jillian, and then she took a shot at Scott, who makes this show worth watching, trying to find the soundbite in which she goes after him, Scott Jennings. It's top 5.
I'm never bringing people on to say crazy things. Let's be frank about that. That is never the intention, okay? People's decisions to say crazy things are never expected or predictable. However, I mean, and I know that folks really dislike Scott for his views, but I would say that, there are views that you don't like, that you think are unfounded, but that are pretty widely shared. And I think Scott falls into that category. Now, there are definitely times, if you watch the show, that we have conversations where I will say to Scott and others, just stop. Because we're not playing whatever game it is that you want to play in this moment.
Got it, Sean? So she needs to apologize for Scott Jennings because she's heard, CNN's audience is overwhelmingly left, that people don't like him and he says crazy things. And, he's such a lunatic, it's worthwhile airing those views because they belong to MAGA.
Yeah. By the way, I mean, the only time that anyone talks about CNN now, but that is as close to watching CNN as I come, though. So now I've got MSNBC and as enough of CNN as I need. But the thing that's interesting is gosh, I mean, it's going to take forever for me to. I bet you that by the time I get that logo right, that they will be out of business anyway. So that's actually
you're right.
The only reason that people talk about CNN now is because of usually something that Scott Jennings has actually said. So their relevance is actually pretty much tied to Scott Jennings going on shows. That being said, I find it interesting how she described that. People don't like Scott because of his views. Well, I'm sorry. That's a very myopic look at the world, meaning basically all the people that we have come on my show or my network at CNN are people who agree with me that think that everything in MAGA is horrible. Watching CNN implode is amazing. You would think that after they got rid of everyone like Jim Acosta, they fired Brian Stelter once, that they would at least sort of learn their lesson. Instead, they bring Brian back and double down on stupid.
It's so bad. Let me just give you a little taste of how she's doing. At 10 p.m., this is just the other night on Tuesday. At 10 p.m., Greg Gutfeld in the key demo that they used to get advertisers pulled in a three, which is 327,000. which is not bad at 10 p.m. Abby Phillip, 91,000. She did not even break 100,000. You guys don't understand. You know how bad this is? This is so dreadful. You cannot stay in business like this. This is the prime time. The prime time demo did not break 100,000, thanks to Abby Phillip, who went down from her almost equally crappy lead-in at 9, which was 112. Anderson Cooper had 86,000 versus Jesse Waters 290. 7 p.m., Laura Ingraham gets 264. The 7 p.m. on CNN gets 76. Brett Baer gets 226. Jake Tapper, 73. The 5, which is the number 1 rated show on TV, gets 332. Jake Tapper gets 85. These numbers are just absolutely dreadful. And by the way, Abby Phillip is in last place. She's also losing to MSNBC. You cannot stay employed. And I guarantee you she's making millions of dollars for putting no points on the board, because that's how cable news operates for now. But as Mark pointed out in the beginning of the show, newsflash, cable news and TV news is on a bit of an iceberg, or I guess a bit of a ship about to hit an iceberg. YouTube is where it's at. And so she's on a sinking ship. But in any event, the solution, Dan, is not to then start ripping the 2 guests you've had on who've said things that conservatives agree with.
I mean, Megyn, what were we talking about to start this show? The decline of Democratic voter registration advantages and the struggles of the Democratic Party. And now you have a host on a channel watched by a lot of Democrats in which you're saying that the primary guest in Scott Jennings, who represents 50% of this country, that I have to shut him down often because his views are so, unacceptable or not mainstream in her telling, right? This is the feedback loop. This is they're crazy, they're wrong, we're right. All they say is lies, and we're always right. And, I look at Donald Trump, RFK, Tulsi Gabbard, like this big tent. They have a lot of it's a raucous coalition. We are increasingly getting narrow. And even in our media filters, there is still this kind of Trump derangement syndrome of focusing on the man, on process, on right versus wrong, instead of kind of welcoming the big debate. We're not going to get better until we open up.
These
Go ahead,
places,
Mark.
These places don't have a business model, in part because I guarantee you none of these anchors' numbers are going to get better. They're just not. The audience has spoken. As our friend Britt Hume would say, sometimes the dog won't eat the dog food. And they don't seem inclined to make any changes. And their identities are up in the air. Whether you're talking about MS Now, see, I did it, or CNN, they pay lip service to the notion. No, we don't want to just appeal to the left. We don't want to be biased. We want to appeal to all potential customers. But then if you look at their coverage from Friday till Monday of President Trump's efforts to try to get a peace deal, it's as hostile and as myopically deranged as any coverage of Trump I've seen ever. It's just mocking him, accusing him of just being in it for a Nobel Peace Prize, of dividing Europe, of saying the Europeans had to come to keep him from making a deal. He can't make a deal without Europe and Zelensky. It's all just made up. So, I want strong news organizations, but these places are going with primetime anchors in particular who simply do not have an interest in bigger numbers, because if they did, they would recognize that they're turning off more than half the country. And with Scott is the best thing they have. I'd like to see her and Abby Phillip numbers without Scott, because anyone I know who watches the show is watching for Scott.
Exactly right. They like the conflict at a minimum. And what does she do? She goes out and dumps on him. That's the thanks he gets. She was one of the worst, going out there and saying, the Europeans rushed to the White House out of 9/11 level concerns about Trump. Yeah. Wrong. That's her bias. And then back to, again, speaking about what we did in the first hour. So this is what she does after Jillian Michaels reflects some of those concerns about, that Trump and Team Trump have about the Smithsonian and the museums. Like, what are we doing? Why are we America's all about slavery? That's the only thing we've ever done. That's what defines us. Not the liberation of Europe and saving the free world. Not the defeat of communism in the 1980s. No, it's all about slavery. We've never been able to get past it. We're still just as racist as we were. She decides the other day to go out there and open up her show with this, SOT 1.
Last week on this show, a guest shocked the table by arguing in part that slavery in America can't just be blamed on one race, and that museums put too much focus on the role of white people who participated in that terrible institution. And now tonight, that same argument is being pushed by the President of the United States. Donald Trump says that one of the reasons for his crackdown on Smithsonian museums is, quote, everything discussed is how bad slavery was. It's important to say objectively, slavery was indeed bad. It was evil, and it is impossible to understand the true history of this country without fully grappling with slavery's impact. For many of the white Americans who did not personally own slaves, they benefited from a caste system that concentrated wealth and political power in their hands. When we acknowledge the existence of black people who operated George Washington's Mount Vernon or the black hands that built the White House, we are acknowledging the existence, the perseverance, and the contributions of the souls that white supremacy sought to erase. And I share this not as a lecture for you, but as a lesson.
Oh, really?
Oh,
okay.
Thank you.
It's a miracle she has 91,000, Sean. Yeah. A miracle.
I mean, look, there's a few things there. One, I would just say with respect to Scott Jennings, whether it's Scott Jennings or Jillian Michaels, when you go out and do that to a guest, to Mark's point about David Brinkley's lesson, they're never coming back again. And as a 53-year-old man, I would have no way. I rarely stay up till 10 o'clock. So the idea that Scott Jennings is going to want to stay up and go on that show again is nuts, right? They're going to alienate guests because it's hard enough as an older guy to stay up that late. But the bigger and broader point that I think is sort of, you know, from the Trump going after the Smithsonian to the Kennedy Center is a huge contrast from Trump 1.0 to 2.0. And it's this. The first term, we largely set aside culture, if you will. Trump said, I'm just not going to go to the Kennedy Center. I'm not going to be involved in the Kennedy Center honors. We're not going to deal with higher education. We'll just focus on some of these policy agendas. They didn't yield the field in Trump 2.0. They're basically saying, as Andrew Breitbart did so correctly, politics is downstream from culture. And therefore, if we really want to make change, we need to attack the culture in our country and the pervasiveness of the woke DEI culture that has grown, especially in the last 4 years. They're taking on the Kennedy Center. They're taking on higher education. They're taking on the Smithsonians, right? They are actually understanding how much more powerful they can be this time, taking on corporations. But the bottom line is this administration, Trump 2.0, is vastly different than 1.0, where he did a lot of great things. And I think this time he understands the power and levers of government in a way that he didn't in Trump 1. And frankly, has a team around him that's willing to take on that culture war that we didn't in the first term. And so bravo to them for doing this, because this is where real change will occur.
What she doesn't realize is the country is with Trump on this. There's very few people who aren't far left woke Democrats who want to walk into the Smithsonian museums throughout Washington and just be reminded of our darkest chapters. Just bring back the absolute worst things we did over and over and over, as opposed to celebrate the rich cultural history of America and its achievements. So what does she do? She puts on her school marm outfit with the ruffles in her, the monochromatic red outfit with the silk ruffles coming down, George Washington style, you could argue. Looks like the karat or whatever the thing is that they used to wear, with her little, red jacket, and sits on the 3/4 chair, the stool in front of the screen, and indeed lectures to us, complete with graphics, with explaining to us that there was this thing called slavery and it was bad. And here's why it was bad. And here's how all the white people benefit. This is absolutely fucking absurd. Literally nobody is challenging that we had slavery and that it's bad. It's all about focus, which I don't know her. She may be dumb. I was going to say she's too smart to not understand that. This is probably very dishonest, but she might be dumb. So I'm actually not going to give her the benefit of that doubt. It's absurd. So what do we think the effect of the sparring between President Donald Trump and the Fed is going to be? Can the Fed take the right action at the right time? Do we trust in that? Or are we going to be looking at a potential economic slowdown as they slow roll any of their moves as they worry about his tariffs? And what exactly does all of this mean for your savings? You might want to consider diversifying right about now with gold through Birch Gold Group. For decades, gold has been viewed as a safe haven in times of economic stagnation, global uncertainty, and high inflation. And Birch Gold makes it incredibly easy for you to diversify some of your savings into gold. If you have an IRA or old 401k, you can convert that into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold, or just buy some gold to keep it in your safe. First, get educated. Birch Gold will send you a free info kit on gold. Just text MK to the number 989898. Again, text MK to 989898, and you'll start the process of just getting the 411 on what it means to own gold. Consider diversifying a portion of your savings into gold, so if the Fed cannot stay ahead of the curve for the country, at least you can stay ahead of the curve for yourself. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.